You know what your problem is, Lexi? You're too desperate to fit in. Everyone can smell it, like a wounded animal, stumbling into a wolf den. His words pierced through the conference room. Silence as my presentation slides, flickered on the screen behind me. 8 pairs of eyes shifted uncomfortably. Nobody spoke. Nobody defended me. Grant! Leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, the corner of his mouth lifting into that smile I'd grown to dread. The client needs confidence, not whatever this is, he continued, gesturing dismissively at my months of work. Displayed on screen, this design approach lacks vision. It's amateur hour. My voice caught in my throat as I tried to respond. The room tilted slightly. 3 months of late nights, research, and innovation. Dismissed in seconds. The worst part wasn't Grant's criticism. It was how the others nodded along. Even Devin, who'd praised my concepts privately yesterday. I've taken the liberty of preparing an alternative, Grant announced, connecting his laptop to the projector, something more aligned with professional standards. My hands trembled as his presentation appeared, slide after slide of my designs with minor color adjustments and his name in the footer. My research, my innovations, my concepts, all now bearing his signature. This is my work, I whispered, then found my voice. These are my designs. Grant's expression hardened. B. Careful with accusations, Lexi. Nobody likes a woman who can't handle criticism. Maybe you should step outside, until you've composed yourself. The department head cleared his throat. Let's take 5, everyone. As the room emptied, I remained frozen, staring at my stolen work. Grant lingered behind, approaching so close I could smell his cologne. Nobody will believe you, he murmured, his breath hot against my ear. Not against me. I've been here 7 years. You're just the diversity hire who couldn't cut it. Keep pushing and I'll make sure you never work in design again. He straightened my presentation notes with mock helpfulness. Some people belong in this industry, Lexi. You're not one of them. As he walked out, I noticed a small object drop from his pocket onto the carpet. Through my tears, I leaned down to see what it was, and my entire world shifted. In that moment, I didn't know it would lead to police officers storming our office, metal handcuffs gleaming as they approached his desk, or the emergency HR meeting where executives would stare at me with horror and newfound respect. I only knew that what I held in my palm would change everything. If you're invested in my story so far, please hit like and subscribe to support me sharing these difficult experiences. Your comments help me know I'm not alone in what happened. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Alexandra, Lexi to friends and colleagues. I've dreamed of working in architectural design since I was 12, sketching buildings in the margins of my notebooks while other kids passed notes about crushes and weekend plans. My single mom saved every drawing I made, telling me I'd change skylines someday. I graduated top of my class, interned at smaller firms, and finally landed my dream position at Brookfield Design Associates 3 months ago. The firm had a reputation for innovative commercial spaces and a client list that made my heart race. I should have been suspicious when I realized I'd be the only woman on the 10-person design team, but I was too excited to care. Your portfolio shows tremendous promise, Warren, the department head, had said during my interview. Your perspective is exactly what we need to stay competitive. My first day, I arrived an hour early, wearing a new outfit I'd carefully selected. Professional but creative, the office hummed with activity, sleek and modern with glass-walled meeting rooms and open workspaces. 9 men looked up as Warren introduced me, their expressions ranging from polite interest to outright skepticism. Grant stood out immediately, tall with perfectly styled dark hair and expensive clothes. He occupied the largest workspace near the windows, while others nodded, Hello, Grant. Merely assessed me. You know what your problem is, Lexi? You're far too eager to belong. Everyone senses it, like an injured animal wandering straight into a wolf's den. His words cut through the conference room. Silence settled as my presentation slides flickered behind me on the screen. 8 sets of eyes shifted uneasily. No one spoke. No one stood up for me. Grant leaned back in his chair, arms folded, the edge of his mouth curling into that smile I'd come to fear. The client needs assurance, not whatever this is, he went on, waving dismissively at the months of work displayed behind me. This design direction lacks clarity. It's amateur hour. My voice tightened in my throat as I tried to answer. The room swayed slightly. 3 months of late nights, research, and creativity. Erased in seconds. The worst part wasn't Grant's attack. It was the way the others nodded in agreement. Even Devon, who had praised my ideas privately just yesterday. "I've taken the liberty of preparing an alternative," Grant announced, plugging his laptop into the projector. "Something more aligned with professional expectations." My hands shook as his presentation filled the screen. Slide after slide of my designs, altered only by subtle color changes, and his name stamped in the footer. My research, my innovation, my concepts, all now carrying his signature. "This is my work," I whispered, then steadied myself. "These are my designs." Grant's face hardened. "Be careful with accusations, Lexi. No one likes a woman who can't take criticism. Maybe you should step outside until you've gathered yourself." The department head cleared his throat. "Let's take 5, everyone." As the room emptied, I stayed rooted in place, staring at my stolen work. Grant lingered behind, stepping close enough that I could smell his cologne. "No one will believe you," he muttered, his breath hot against my ear. "Not over me. I've been here 7 years. You're just the diversity hire who couldn't keep up. Push this any further, and I'll make sure you never work in design again." He straightened my presentation notes with false helpfulness. "Some people belong in this industry, Lexi. You don't." As he walked out, I noticed something small fall from his pocket onto the carpet. Through my tears, I bent down to see what it was, and my entire world shifted. In that moment, I had no idea it would lead to police officers flooding our office, metal handcuffs flashing as they moved toward his desk, or the emergency HR meeting where executives would stare at me with shock and newfound respect. I only knew that what rested in my palm would change everything. If you're invested in my story so far, please hit like and subscribe to support me as I share these difficult experiences. Your comments remind me that I'm not alone in what happened. Now let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Alexandra, Lexi to friends and coworkers. I've dreamed of working in architectural design since I was 12, sketching buildings in the margins of my notebooks while other kids passed notes about crushes and weekend plans. My single mother saved every drawing, telling me I'd change a skyline someday. I graduated at the top of my class, interned at smaller firms, and finally landed my dream role at Brookfield Design Associates 3 months ago. The firm was known for innovative commercial spaces and a client roster that made my pulse race. I should have been suspicious when I realized I'd be the only woman on the 10-person design team, but I was too thrilled to care. "Your portfolio shows incredible promise, Warren," the department head had said during my interview. "Your perspective is exactly what we need to stay competitive." On my first day, I arrived an hour early, dressed in a new outfit I'd chosen carefully. Professional, but imaginative. The office buzzed with activity, sleek and modern, with glass-walled meeting rooms and open workstations. 9 men looked up as Warren introduced me, their reactions ranging from polite curiosity to open doubt. Grant stood out immediately. Tall, with flawlessly styled dark hair and expensive clothing. He occupied the largest workspace near the windows. While the others nodded hello, Grant simply evaluated me, his gaze moving from my face to my portfolio case and back again. "Impressive credentials," he said later, appearing beside my desk without warning. "Let's hope the skill matches the paperwork." I laughed awkwardly, missing the threat in his tone. I'm excited to prove myself. The first 2 weeks passed in a rush of learning systems, meeting clients, and finding my footing. I noticed small oddities but brushed them aside. My computer sometimes had different settings when I arrived in the mornings. Files appeared in folders I hadn't created. My chair was adjusted. Minor things easily blamed on cleaning staff or my own stress-induced forgetfulness. Then the hovering began. His eyes moved from my face to my portfolio case and back again. "Impressive credentials," he said later, appearing beside my desk without warning, adding that he hoped the talent matched the paperwork. I laughed nervously, missing the threat beneath his words, and said I was excited to prove myself. The first 2 weeks passed in a blur of learning systems, meeting clients, and settling in. And I noticed small oddities but dismissed them. My computer settings changed overnight. Files appeared in folders I hadn't created. My chair height was adjusted. Minor things I blamed on cleaning staff or my own pressure-induced forgetfulness, until the hovering began. Grant would stand behind me watching me work, offering guidance that felt more like control, reaching over to move my cursor and alter my designs while explaining that clients preferred traditional elements. In meetings, he interrupted with counterpoints, speaking over me until I fell silent, and what started as occasional corrections became constant undermining. Blue became green, contemporary became classic. One Tuesday morning, I arrived to find my desk drawer slightly open and my grandmother's silver bracelet gone. I searched everywhere, asked everyone, but nothing turned up. Devin suggested I'd left it at home, while Grant shrugged and said, "Professional environments require organization." The following week, my prescription medication disappeared, then my special drawing pen. Small items, but deeply personal. Warren commented that I seemed distracted, and when I insisted things were going missing, he warned that it was a serious accusation. Grant stepped in smoothly, blaming stress, and their concerned looks made me doubt myself. By the second month, I was photographing my desk nightly, keeping my bag with me, arriving early and staying late as isolation grew, and whispers followed me through the office, painting me as unstable and underperforming. Then came the sabotage, corrupted files, clients requesting someone more experienced, and my confidence collapsed as every chance to prove myself was dismantled. After a brutal meeting where Grant took over my presentation, Warren told me the creative industry wasn't for everyone and suggested I accept Grant's unprecedented offer to mentor me. That night, alone in the office, I caught Grant watching me through my darkened monitor, offering to take over my work and reminding me that design required thick skin. Shaken, I packed up and left, and at home, I froze when I emptied my bag to find a small black device nestled between my notebook and wallet. Round, blinking, unmistakable. In that moment, everything clicked. This wasn't rivalry or cruelty, but calculated psychological warfare, and I understood I was dealing with someone who wouldn't stop until I was broken or gone. I didn't sleep that night, instead researching tracking devices, harassment patterns, and how to gather evidence without alerting my stalker, and by morning I had a plan. Grant expected tears or resignation, not resistance. And what I didn't yet know was how deep his obsession ran, how many women had suffered before me, or how chilling the discoveries on his devices would be. But I was about to find out. The next morning, I arrived at work with my plan already in motion, the tracking device still in my bag, now tucked inside a small fabric pouch beside a decoy I'd bought overnight, letting Grant believe his surveillance continued unnoticed. My new smartwatch had been delivered and set up before dawn, looking ordinary while continuously recording audio when activated, and a small camera pen rested in my shirt pocket, indistinguishable from a normal pen. If Grant wanted to monitor me, I'd return the favor with interest. "You look different today," Devin remarked as I settled at my desk, and I smiled, just determined. Grant arrived an hour later, scanning the room before his eyes landed on me, pausing as if sensing the shift in my demeanor before approaching with his usual calculated ease. "How's the Harrison project coming along? Still struggling?" "Actually, I had a breakthrough last night," I replied, holding his gaze, adding that sometimes our best ideas come when we're pushed to our limits. Something flickered across his face, surprise, maybe concern, because I wasn't following his script. "Well, don't get too attached to your concept," he warned, tapping my desk and saying he'd need to review everything before submission. As he walked away, I discreetly stopped the recording, the first interaction captured. Over the next 2 weeks, I documented everything: the accidental coffee spill on my sketches, the missing client emails Grant claimed never existed until I produced screenshots, the whispered comments he thought no one could hear, emotional liability, diversity obligation, temporary problem. Each night, I transferred recordings to encrypted storage, building a precise timeline of harassment, learning his patterns as he escalated after successful presentations, grew bolder when Warren was away, and lingered late on Tuesdays and Thursdays. What I hadn't expected was discovering I wasn't his first target. Researching his background, I found a pattern at previous firms: talented women hired, then gone within months, and deeper digging revealed an anonymous blog post describing workplace stalking that mirrored my experience exactly, right down to missing items and professional sabotage. The writer said he collected trophies from each victim, souvenirs of surrender, and suddenly my grandmother's bracelet and my special pen made sense, sending ice through my veins as I realized this wasn't improvised cruelty, but a refined methodology Grant had perfected across multiple victims. One evening, staying late on purpose, I watched his reflection enter the office, checking for witnesses before circling my desk like a predator, startling me with comments about dedication and wasted effort, probing about the Parkview presentation and my first major client meeting, leaning close to say, "Clients sense weakness like he does," every word captured by my watch as I replied evenly and continued working. After he left, I backed up my files everywhere, unsettled by his confidence, unaware that by morning, every file and backup would be corrupted, hidden messages surfacing only as they crashed, incompetent, unqualified, unwanted. When I discovered the sabotage, I didn't panic as he expected, but calmly walked to it, ensuring witnesses saw the damage and embedded text, the director confirming it was deliberate with only 2 hours before the meeting. As if summoned, Grant appeared with perfectly staged concern, colleagues gathering as I explained everything was corrupted, all backups too, and he responded with feigned sympathy, eyes gleaming, calling it devastating timing for such an important presentation. Then came his trap. "You know, I always keep copies of team projects for situations like this," he said smoothly. "I have a version from last week. Not your final work, but better than nothing." The setup was flawless. He'd sabotaged my files knowing I'd be forced to rely on his version, which would inevitably be altered to fail or make my work look inferior. Either I'd present nothing, or I'd present something designed to humiliate me. "That's so thoughtful," I replied, watching his expression brighten at my apparent surrender. "Could you send it over right away?" When his files arrived, I opened them immediately, putting on a show of relief. "This helps tremendously. Thank you, Grant." He walked away victorious, unaware I would never open those files during the actual presentation. During those sleepless nights of planning, I had created an entirely separate version stored off-network on my personal drive. While Grant believed I was desperately reviewing his sabotaged files, I was transferring my real presentation to the conference room computer. When the Parkview executives arrived, Grant positioned himself prominently, clearly expecting my failure. Warren introduced me with thinly veiled concern, having heard about the file disaster. I stepped to the front, heart racing but voice steady. "Before I begin, I want to thank my colleague Grant for offering his backup files after this morning's technical issues," I said, nodding toward him. Fortunately, I maintain additional backups off-site for precisely these situations. Grant's smile froze as I launched into a flawless presentation of my original, uncorrupted work. The clients were engaged, asking questions I answered with growing confidence. And when they announced their decision to proceed with my design concept, Grant's face twisted with barely contained rage. That evening, my watch recorded Grant's phone call in the empty office kitchen. She had another backup. I don't know how. Yes, I handled her main files and the server copies. No, this is getting complicated. She doesn't break like the others. More direct measures may be necessary. The phrase sent a chill through me. Whatever psychological game we'd been playing had escalated into something far more dangerous. That night, I compiled everything: the tracking device, audio recordings, corrupted files with embedded threats, photos of my bruised arm from Grant's so-called accidental shoves, screenshots of manipulated emails, and the clear pattern of harassment documented in my journal. I added research from his previous workplaces and the women who'd left after his arrival, then made 3 copies: one for the police, one for HR, and one secured in cloud storage. While reviewing the evidence, I caught something I'd missed in an audio file: Grant speaking on the phone. The medication is hidden with the others. My little collection. She's nearly finished anyway. Another week and she'll quit or have a breakdown. They always do. My missing medication. The others. How many women had he terrorized like this? How many careers destroyed? How many lives altered? I made my decision. The next morning, I contacted the police and handed over everything. The detective reviewed it with growing concern. "This is methodical stalking and harassment," she said. "The tracking device alone is a criminal offense, but combined with the rest." She looked up. "You mentioned other victims." "At least 3 I've identified," I confirmed, "possibly more." "There's enough here for immediate action," she said, explaining they'd need a statement and access to my work area. I complied, then returned to work as if nothing had changed. For 2 days, I acted normally, feeling Grant's eyes on me, sensing his unease at my unexplained resilience. Then came Wednesday morning. Our team gathered for the weekly status meeting. Grant arrived last, taking his usual seat across from me. Warren began reviewing timelines when the conference room door opened. 2 uniformed officers entered, followed by a plainclothes detective. The room went silent. "Grant Phillips?" the detective asked. Grant straightened. "Yes." "What's this about?" "Please stand and place your hands behind your back. You're under arrest for criminal stalking, cyberstalking, property theft, and workplace harassment." As his rights were read, Grant's eyes locked onto mine, first shocked, then burning with hatred as realization set in. "This is ridiculous," he sputtered. "She's unstable. Ask anyone here." No one spoke. The evidence already had. When officers searched his apartment with a warrant, they uncovered his collection: items taken from women across multiple companies, journals detailing his methods, my grandmother's bracelet, my medication, dozens of other personal belongings labeled with women's names and surrender dates. But it was the trove of unauthorized recordings from tracking devices planted on multiple women that escalated the charges into serious criminal offenses. Grant had cataloged his crimes with disturbing precision, convinced he was too clever to ever be caught. As he was led away through the stunned office, Warren approached me, his face ashen, and quietly said there would be an emergency HR meeting the next morning to understand the full extent of what had happened. What no one realized yet was that Grant's arrest was only the beginning, because that meeting would reveal something none of them expected, something that would reshape not just my future, but the entire company's culture. Grant never understood this about me. I didn't just want to escape my tormentor, I wanted something far more powerful. I wanted change. The emergency HR meeting was set for 9 a.m. in the largest conference room, and when I arrived at 8:30, executives from headquarters I'd never seen before were already there in grave-looking suits, legal counsel with notepads, Warren pacing by the windows, and security stationed discreetly at the doors. The weight of what was coming pressed against my chest as I took my seat. "Thank you for coming, Lexi," the chief operations officer said, explaining they needed to understand exactly what had happened. I nodded, my evidence folder resting on the table as the room filled with department heads, HR representatives, the IT director, and my design team, most avoiding my eyes except Devin, who gave me a small nod of encouragement. The COO assured me the company was committed to understanding how the situation developed and went unaddressed. "With respect," I replied, "it didn't go unaddressed. It went unbelieved." The room shifted uncomfortably, and when HR said that was why we were there, I opened my folder and began. I presented a detailed timeline starting 3 months earlier, documenting the progression from subtle undermining to outright sabotage, the stolen items, corrupted files, tracking device, and coordinated isolation tactics. As I spoke over the next 40 minutes, concern turned into disturbed disbelief. And when I played audio recordings of Grant's threats and phone conversations, several people visibly recoiled. "This shows planning and malice beyond anything I've seen in 15 years of employment law," the legal representative admitted. "There's more," I said quietly, distributing the police report summary from Grant's apartment. The room fell silent. 17 women, Warren whispered, across 6 companies over 9 years. The COO read aloud, detailing his pattern of targeting high-potential women and cataloging personal items and manipulation methods. Devin broke the silence, realizing Grant hadn't even started with me. Emma Barlow from accounting had left after 2 months last year, saying the environment wasn't supportive. The police found her medication too, I confirmed, along with items from others who'd left suddenly. HR's face drained as they mentioned exit interviews, and I explained Grant's methods were designed to make victims doubt themselves and appear unstable if they reported anything. When the COO asked about the recordings that concerned authorities most, I took a breath and explained that Grant didn't just track his targets, he recorded them, private conversations, family calls, even moments inside their homes. I connected my laptop and played the compilation approved by police, Grant calmly narrating his techniques over recordings of women breaking down after public humiliations, laughing as he described sabotaging a major client opportunity, outlining future targets, and most damning of all, discussing with 2 senior Brookfield employees which women were problems and needed managing. Names were spoken, dates cited, specific incidents laid bare, and 2 executives abruptly excused themselves from the room. When the recording ended, the silence was total. The legal representative wrote furiously while the COO's hands trembled. Those 2 executives, the HR director finally admitted, had been with the company for 15 years and had facilitated harassment for much of that time. Their employment ended the moment they left this room, the COO said coldly, before turning to me, expressing horror at what I'd endured and gratitude for bringing it to light, admitting that had I left like the others, the predatory behavior would have continued unchecked. "That's why I didn't leave," I replied simply. "Because his pattern thrives on isolation, making victims feel powerless, and I refuse to be powerless." The meeting stretched on for hours as reporting systems, hiring practices, and management training were torn apart and rebuilt, and by afternoon, immediate actions were underway. New reporting protocols, anonymous ethics channels, mandatory training, and external audits. 2 weeks followed in a blur of police interviews, legal proceedings, and restructuring. Grant stayed in custody, denied bail due to the risk of witness contact, while the 2 executives were investigated and former victims came forward. The atmosphere at work transformed as Warren stepped down, the team was reorganized, and interim leadership installed. Then came the email summoning me to the COO's office, where she sat with the CEO and chief legal counsel. "Please sit, Lexi," the CEO said, discussing my future. acknowledging my courage while admitting staying might carry difficult associations. When I asked if they were suggesting I leave, the COO cut in, explaining they were creating a new role, Director of Workplace Culture and Safety, to oversee protocols, training, and act as a liaison, reporting directly to the executive committee. They weren't offering me an escape, but the power to transform the company from within. 2 months later, I stood before the full staff, presenting new safety initiatives shaped by both my design skills and lived experience, feeling pride for the first time. The impact spread beyond Brookfield as other firms reviewed their practices and sought my guidance. Then came Grant's sentencing. I sat beside 5 other women as the judge detailed nearly a decade of calculated workplace terrorism, rejecting weak excuses before sentencing him to 7 years in prison, a lifetime corporate ban, and restraining orders for all victims. As he was led away, he looked back once, and I held his gaze without flinching, watching his power vanish. Outside, the women gathered, speaking of silence and shame, and I told them, each time a new employee praised the company's outstanding culture, each time someone used the reporting system successfully, and each time a potential issue was resolved before turning into harassment, I counted it as a victory. My grandmother's bracelet, recovered from Grant's apartment, now rests on my wrist as I lead meetings in the same conference room where he once demeaned me. The company where he tried to break me now carries my vision, not only in its designs, but in its very foundation. Some might call this success the sweetest revenge. I call it justice, not only for me, but for everyone who deserves to be valued for their talent instead of targeted for it. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to support more content that brings attention to workplace issues many endure in silence. Your comments help others realize they're not alone. Have you witnessed or experienced workplace harassment? Sharing our stories is the first step toward changing toxic cultures everywhere. It ended that day, not just for us, but for everyone who followed. My revenge wasn't his arrest, his sentence, the promotion, or the policies. It was turning my nightmare into protection for countless others. 2 years later, my initiative had been adopted by 37 companies. Grant remained imprisoned. I sat on the executive committee. My work earned recognition, and my greatest satisfaction came from mentoring young women in the supportive environment I had once been denied. Each time a new employee commented on the company's exceptional culture, each time someone used the reporting system successfully, each time a potential problem was addressed before becoming harassment, I counted these as victories. My grandmother's bracelet recovered from Grant's apartment now rests on my wrist as I lead meetings in the same conference room where he once belittled me. The company where he sought to destroy me now bears the imprint of my vision, not just in building designs, but in its very foundation. Some might call this success the best revenge. I call it justice, not just for me, but for everyone who deserves to be valued for their talent rather than targeted for it. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to support more content that shines light on workplace issues many face in silence. Your comments help others know they're not alone. Have you witnessed or experienced workplace harassment? Sharing our stories is the first step toward changing toxic cultures everywhere.